This is Derrick Broze. This is Derrick Broze of the Conscious Resistance. I'm here in Standing Rock.
That man is wanted in 5 different countries: Chile, Argentina, Brazil.
We've been fighting a long time. We've all lost so very much. So many loved ones gone.
Don't you fucking tease that horse!
You are not alone. There are pockets of resistance all around the planet. We are at the brink. Above all, stay alive. You have no idea how important you are. If you're listening to this, you are the resistance.
All right. What's up, everybody? This is Derrick Broze, the Conscious Resistance. Today is Thursday, and I'm here live. I'm on the road still, not at my desk, and I don't have my microphone with me, so I hope this is coming through okay. Let me know on the audio if it's sounding all right, and if so, we will continue. First, I'll remind you guys that my website is theconsciousresistance.com, theconsciousresistance.com. Guys, this is where I've been broadcasting my content for going on 13 years now, producing documentaries, writing books, video reports like this one, interviews, podcasts, all kinds of interesting and solutions-focused content exploring spirituality, both mental, physical, and spiritual. So I encourage you to check us out at theconsciousresistance.com. And today I'm going to be covering my most recent article for The Last American Vagabond, which is focused on the ongoing fluoride story. And if those of you who've been following my work, you know that this is something I've been keeping up with now for, I want to say, 4 or 5 years. This lawsuit from the Fluoride Action Network, originally starting in 2016. And thank you on the sound. Thank you, Jeremy. The lawsuit started in 2016 with the Fluoride Action Network and Food and Water Watch and other organizations suing the EPA after they filed a petition under the new law called the Toxic Substance Control Act, which allows citizens to petition the government to say, we believe substance X, Y, and Z may be toxic to health, and we think it should be reviewed. So the Fluoride Action Network did that with fluoride, which is put in the water here in the United States. Hydrofluorosilicic acid, a byproduct of pesticides, phosphate mining, aluminum mining. And the petition was denied, and so they've sued the government. And now it's been going on since 2016. Here we are in 2023. The actual hearings in this lawsuit turned into a trial in summer 2020, and I covered that extensively, as I'll go over in just a moment. And basically, it was put on hold for a few years, and in the last couple months, we're slowly getting, let me go ahead and open up my previous tab here. We're slowly getting more details on what's been going on behind the scenes. And the latest developments, which just happened this Tuesday, is that now the second phase of the fluoride trial has been set for 2024. But before we dive further into all of that, again, guys, my website, theconsciousresistance.com. This is where you can find all of my content, download my books for free, watch our movies for free. And I really want to say, guys, if you do want to support us, I encourage you to go to theconsciousresistance.com/invest. I've just recently launched a new monthly support through Buy Me a Coffee, not Patreon. So if you want to support me outside of Patreon, I don't use that anymore. You can support me on this Buy Me a Coffee, where you can also send support to my P.O. box I have there. But as you can see here, just like Patreon, set up for $3 a month, $10 a month, whatever you want. And you can continue to support so that we can do these types of reports. Now, as I mentioned, this is my author page on The Last American Vagabond. For those who don't know, I write at thelastamericanvagabond.com. And you can go here to the team. You see my name, Derrick Broze. You can see some of my series of articles, including Fluoride Trial. You click this, and it takes you here to every article I've written over the last 4 years, 3 or 4 years. It's 2, maybe 3 pages of articles and interviews related to this. So if this is all new to you, go get caught up. I'm not going to rehash everything today. But we're going over my latest article, and this will, again, is linked at theconsciousresistance.com under our latest post, Fluoride lawsuit to resume in January 2024. Because that's the latest information, guys. As I said, it's been going on for 7+ years, and now it is going to resume January 29th, 2024. So if you thought it was taking long already, it's going to take even longer now. The hearings were in 2020 for a couple of months, then they got put on hold in the fall of 2020, It's been 2.5 years now, and then we have some recent movement, but no new actual phase of the trial. And now the judge and the EPA and the lawyer, Michael Connett with the Fluoride Action Network, agreed to a timeline of January 2024, January 29th. So starting at the end of January, they said that they expect the trial to run for 1 to 2 weeks. So that'll be into basically early February 2024. And then you would assume shortly after that, the judge will make his ruling, unless something else happens that delays this even further, as it has already been dragged on. But that's the latest bit of information. So for those of you who just trying to get what's the latest in the fluoride lawsuit, fluoride trial, I get this question periodically. Again, you can always just go to my website and search on our water fluoridation category, or you can go to Last American Vagabond, check out my recent articles on that. Now, the rest of this video is going to get a little deeper into the background for those of you who care and want to get the background. And I actually think this is the most important part. If you just wanted to know what's going on with the trial, when it happens again, January 29th, 2024, it's basically on hold now to then. There'll be some procedural things taking place, and I might write about them as things develop over the next however many months that is now, 10 months away. So, but beyond that, there are some really interesting details that people need to know, and that I wish, and I just hope more people out there in the independent media will reach out to me to do interviews about this, or just do your own reporting, because there's so many little nuggets of powerful information that the public needs to know, and I'm doing my best to put it out there, and I thank you everybody who supports that. So the previous video I did on this topic, we were talking about, let's go back here to our water fluoridation category on the website. You scroll down, oh, I don't have it listed there. Let's just search water fluoridation. And I did a report a couple of weeks ago about how the National Toxicology Program, which is this government agency that has been doing a review of the studies on fluoride for several years now. And here you can see, this is all my reporting I've done on fluoride. This isn't the one I'm looking for, though. So this government agency, the National Toxicology Program, they have been doing research on the alleged toxicity of fluoride, specifically looking at, is it a neurotoxin? Man, I can't find this report. Is it a neurotoxin? And they've said in their own words, here's their words from their May 2022 report, which was suppressed, as I'm going to outline in a moment. It was suppressed. The reason you've never seen this report or heard of this report is because behind the scenes, while the scientists said it was ready for release, officials at the Department of Health and Human Services and the CDC blocked the release of it. And that's what you need to know, is that government agencies, bureaucrats are blocking the release of science that shows, here's the data, quote, higher fluoride exposure is consistently associated with lower IQ in children. And I will say this, based on the emails and the documents we have that have been released, we know that the scientists didn't think it was necessary to include that word higher, but the reviewers from the government kind of strong-armed them and made them add that word higher. So it says higher fluoride exposure. It's kind of like a caveat. So it's not like not regular fluoride exposure, but in the debates, and this is something I've reported in one of my previous articles, in the debates behind the scenes between the scientists and the reviewers, which is actually an unprecedented kind of window into that world of the peer review process. So it's actually really interesting. And again, go back and read my last couple articles. You'll understand more what I'm talking about. But the scientists themselves, they keep telling the reviewers, we don't need to add the word higher. We don't need to add these little caveats you're trying to make us add, because they rightly recognized that it's not just, for one, like a person who's drinking or cooking with tap water that's fluoridated, that's only one exposure. They're also being exposed to it through their shower. They're being exposed to fluoride in processed foods. They're being exposed to it in canned goods that use, usually they're packaged with water, and that typically, unless specifically a company says, that's specifically typically packaged with fluoridated water, fluorides in pharmaceuticals, and on and on and on, right? So yes, the study, and the scientists also said that the studies they looked at, because they did a review of like 500 studies, narrowed it down to the 20 best ones that were least bias and highest quality, and they said that, in their own words, in these debates with the reviewers who are trying to get them to change their words of this NTP report that found that fluoride lowers IQ in children, the scientists within the National Toxicology Program, a government-funded, taxpayer-funded agency, said that they stand by their work because the public is being exposed to fluoride in a number of different areas, and that some of the studies they looked at were above the levels, the government recommended levels. But they also said that some of the studies they looked at were at the levels the government recommends and below that the level the government recommends, and still found problems with water fluoridation, meaning that your child's IQ, their brains, their neurodevelopment is threatened every time that they're exposed to this, or if they're in utero and you're a pregnant mom and you're drinking fluoridated water, and then your baby's born and you're using the fluoridated formula and then reconstituting it with fluoridated water, they're getting triple exposed to this stuff. So you really need to think about this. And there was another report that came out recently after the government was forced to release this on their website through this lawsuit. It's a July 2022 meta-analysis titled Association Between Fluoride Exposure and Children's Intelligence, a Systematic Review and Meta-Analysis. And the scientists behind this said, quote, "This meta-analysis confirms the results of previous meta-analyses and extends them by including newer, more precise studies with individual level exposure measures. The consistency of the data supports an inverse association between fluoride exposure and children's IQ." So I say all that to say that the science is clear, guys. The science is clear. We've had science before this, but this trial, this is why it's historic. This is why I'm lamenting that there's not more people reporting on it, because it should be one of the biggest stories going in mainstream media and independent media. We have evidence that another conspiracy is true. You ever been called crazy for talking about fluoride? I'm sure some of you have. I know that in my activism over the years, and especially as a journalist, you talk about things like this, and people, they look at you like you're nuts. I go to, for example, I'll go to political events to try to confront previous mayors or political officials about why they're supporting water fluoridation, and they kind of just look at me like I'm an idiot and laugh in my face. They're sort of like, oh God, one of these fluoride people, right? And it's just so frustrating because the data is on our side, much like it is with vaccines and other things. So let's get a little more into the details. Now, this is where it gets interesting, and this is why the title of this video is titled Fluoride Lawsuit to Resume in January 2024, plus new cover-up details, question mark. And the reason I say question mark is because I can't prove that there's a cover-up going on. I don't have I can't get inside the minds of these people, but there are some interesting things going on here, and I think we can draw some at least we can make some informed conclusions, let's say, or at least remain skeptical. So on Tuesday's hearing, this just happened a couple of days ago, the Fluoride Action Network attorney Michael Connett, he told the federal judge in San Francisco, Judge Edward Chin, that these documents that we just went over, the NTP documents, the meta-analysis that came out through this lawsuit, he said now that we have these documents, he thinks the court has sufficient data to make a decision on the toxicity of fluoride. And the reason he's saying this is because back in 2020, when this trial was first going on, and then the judge put it on hold, the judge was pretty much like, well, there's going to be more studies coming out soon, and I don't want to make a decision without seeing everything, so let's wait. And as we see now, it's been 2 years, and those studies never came out, because now we know behind the scenes, the government was working to cover up these studies, right? And to cover up this report. They didn't want you to see this data, and they wish that you weren't hearing about it. So Michael Connett's saying, look, we got the data now. You have enough to make a decision. But he also said over the coming months, he's going to want to, they have depositions where they depose people. You get called in as a witness on a trial, and they'll do like a videotaped or audio recorded interview with you, kind of cross-examination that they can use for evidence and as part of the trial. So Michael Connett, attorney with Fluoride Action Network, he told Judge Chin that he, quote, intends to examine some of the facts around the Department of Health and Human Services decision not to release the NTP documents. That's the National Toxicology Program, the documents that I just mentioned that, again, we now know because of emails that came out through this court case that the government was trying to prevent this study from being released, and that the scientists behind it said many times that they believed that it was ready for public release, and it was the government that intervened. And it's been reviewed more than any other report that's ever come out of the National Toxicology Program ever. And they're still asking for more reviews because they don't want the public to see this. So, and again, when Michael Connett says we need to examine the facts to see why HHS decided not to release these documents, that's related to those emails. Now, those emails, as I've reported numerous times, and I'll mention here, those emails specifically state that Assistant Secretary of Health, Rachel Levine, which is the transgender person at the Department of Health and Human Services, that this email dated June 3rd from a Nicole Johnson, Associate Director Policy for Policy Partnerships and Strategic Communication in the CDC's Oral Health Division, contacted a Jennifer Greaser, a senior public health policy and analyst in CDC's Washington office. So two different people from different areas of the CDC write each other on June 3rd, 2022 in these emails that we now have. And she says, quote, "The latest we heard yesterday is that ASH, that's Assistant Secretary of Health, Levine, has put the report on hold until further notice." Right there. I mean, so Michael Connett is, can imagine he's going to want to depose one of those ladies or both of them in that email to say, can you tell us more about what you meant in this email? So he told the judge that he's like, I'm going to depose more witnesses so that we can understand why the HHS instructed the NTP not to release the monograph. The monograph's another name for the review that they were doing. He also said he plans to depose someone from the CDC, from the Office of Secretary of Health, as well as NTP Director Richard Wojcik. And Wojcik himself, this other scientist in the NTP, the director, after these emails came out saying that it was his boss, Rachel Levine, that blocked this, he filed a document with the court, a declaration saying, no, it was me. I was actually the one behind it. You know, don't be mad at my boss. It was me. Sort of like he got pushed to, to take the blame, basically. His boss was probably like, hey, I can't be dealing with this fallout. This is just me speculating. And maybe somebody came and said, hey, Wojcik, we need you to take the fall for this. So he files the declaration with the court saying, hey, I'm the one who blocked the release of this NTP monograph. But either way, Michael Connett wants to depose him for court so we can ask him, why did you, choose not to release this document, even though the scientists have been reviewed numerous times and said it was ready for public release? And Michael Connett said that his ultimate goal is, quote, to understand why that report, which was considered complete and final by NTP scientists, was not allowed to be published. Now, this is where it gets interesting. And this is, again, why I'm saying, is there a cover-up going on? Because Judge Edward Chin, throughout this last 3 or 4 years of this lawsuit and this trial, I believe that he's been doing a fairly good job of trying to remain independent and impartial, right? Because if you want to judge, you don't want somebody that's just going to be swayed by the latest trending topic. You want them to stick to the law, right? As far as we know it. And this is not a defense of judges. I'm just saying, if you, in the truest sense of what a judge is supposed to be, an impartial person, you wouldn't want somebody who's easily swayed, right? So that can be a good characteristic. However, in this case, there's clear evidence that there is a cover-up going on and that these scientists, as these emails say, wanted their report to come out to the public, and their bosses blocked the release of it at least a couple times in September 2022 and again in May 2022. We know that this report was blocked from coming out. And now we have the draft version, but it's not official government, policy. According to the US government, fluoridation is still a good thing. That's why we need to find out why this report didn't come out. And hopefully at the end of this trial next February, the judge rules in favor of finding fluoride as a toxin and it is removed from the water once and for all. But in the meantime, Judge Chin, as I wrote here, whenever Michael Connett was saying, hey, I want to depose these scientists and try to find out why this wasn't published, the judge was noticeably annoyed. And I'm saying this in my personal opinion. Like, he clearly was like, oh, why are you going to do that? So what he said was, whenever Michael Connett was saying, well, I need to find out why the NTP scientists, their comments about it being ready for release, why those were ignored and why it was blocked from being released. Because, and I think this is right, Michael Connett said, I imagine when we come back to court, the EPA is going to argue, well, those are just draft reports. We shouldn't pay attention to them, right? Because they were never released, even though, again, the scientists say they were good and they were ready. So Michael Connett's saying, I need to go question these officials so I can understand what was their motivation, so I know how to, answer that argument that I assume the government's going to make. And the judge said, quote, whether there is a goodwill or ill will, isn't it enough that we have the documents? Seeming to say that it doesn't matter if the dentist industry or the pesticide industry, the aluminum industry, and the various players who benefit from putting fluoride in the water, it doesn't matter if them or government officials block the release of this. We have it. We have the documents now, so who cares? Let's not look back. And again, maybe the judge is not supposed to get political and just be objective, but if this story isn't told in these court cases, and if the scientists choose to not speak out, then this story is going to be buried, and we will never get the truth. And yes, there are concerns. The government, I'm sure the government is scared. Various agencies in the government, including groups like the American Dental Association, the U.S. government, EPA, CDC, FDA, and others who continue to say that fluoride is one of the greatest achievements of the 20th century. those people and probably every single dentist who has recommended fluoride to his patients could potentially open themselves up to class action lawsuits when parents realize maybe my kid became dumber because of all that fluoride I was feeding them. And realistically, I mean, it sounds silly, but there will be lawsuits. And I think that's why they're fighting so hard. Obviously, they don't want to admit they're wrong or that they've been lying. But then the other thing is when Michael Connett said, he brought it up and he's like, look, I need to be able to argue. I need to be able to depose these scientists so we can find out how much weight to give the May 2022 draft assessment. And then this is where it gets spicy because the judge was clearly like, back off, bro. At least that's my position. This is what Michael Connett said to the judge. He said, it is our position that this report the court has been waiting on for 2 years, and the only reason it wasn't released is because of political pressure. He told the judge that we need to understand why they made this decision not to publish this report so that the judge knows how much weight to give the report. And then after that, the judge said, look, to me, the science is more important than whether politicians got involved to try to squash the report. So the judge was just like, look, he didn't totally say you can't depose people, but he said, like, he just wasn't really interested in hearing about that. And I think that's going to be interesting when we come back in February to see how he acts, because I know Michael Connett, based on his amazing work he's done so far in this trial, the attorney for the Fluoride Action Network, that he is going to try to bring in these scientists and put them in the hot seat and question them and put it on the record. And I know that's what he's trying to do, is put this information on the record so the public has access to it. And then people like myself can report on it and talk about it and get it out to a wider audience. And the judge seems uninterested in that information being put on the public record. He's kind of just saying, who cares? Let's not look over there. Let's not pay attention if there was, any kind of interference. Let's just look forward. Now, the next thing that's going to happen in this ongoing saga, the trial, as I mentioned, is going to resume in second phase of the trial, January 29th, 2024. But in the meantime, this NTP report, which again, we have the draft version, but we don't know what the final version is going to look like. Well, the next step in this unusual, unprecedented process that has never happened to any other report coming out of the NTP, never had to be reviewed by so many different bodies and organizations, this random bureaucracy called the Board of Scientific Counselors, they chose to form a working group within this specifically to deal with this. So the working group is the latest body to review the NTP monograph, and they're going to be having a meeting in just a couple of weeks on May 4th. It's going to be a public meeting that I believe will be streamed online. And then from there, they're going to make a recommendation to Dr. Richard Wojcik, who again is the director of the NTP, the man who said that it was his responsibility, that he was responsible for blocking the release of the May 2022 draft report. So that you're putting literally the man who said he blocked the report back in charge of whatever comes next. So I don't have high hopes if this report's ever going to come out. But the point is, now that we have the drafts, now Michael Connett and the Fluoride Action Network and the plaintiffs in this case against the EPA can use those data to argue and to prove once and for all that fluoride is harming people. We already know that, but to prove it in a court of law and to make it where, basically if this happens, the federal government would have to ban it. And every single city who's spending money, like Houston spends $5 million, $1 million a year to put this poison in the water, every single city would end that. And all that money, those millions of dollars that's being paid to different companies like Mosaic Co. in Florida, would disappear. And they would all of a sudden have to figure out what to do with their toxic waste. So there is so many people pushing back against this, from industry, government scientists, and I don't know why. We can't get in their heads, but that it's clear. There is a cover-up going on. There is an effort to block this information from going to the public. And the judge, maybe he is impartial, but maybe he has other intentions. I'm becoming less and less hopeful that he is actually going to do what's right. And when it comes back to trial in February, because he seems like he's not going to want to hear any of the so-called conspiracies of political interference when it's clearly relevant. Because, we can say, let's just talk about the science. But if the science that's being presented to you from the government was all contingent on government intervening and preventing other science from coming to the surface, then clearly the political interference does matter. I hope that makes sense. Like, if somebody's intervening when the scientists say, hey, our report is done, we did our homework, it's been reviewed a dozen times, we're ready for it to be released. They even said by May 18, 2022, they wanted it out, and it was never released. It was never allowed to be released. Then it was reviewed again. Then September 2022, they had another draft. That was never released. Here we are in April 2023, now with a court case set for February 2024. and this information is still not known to the masses. I said this on an interview I did earlier today. If we were to go out to the street right now and do man on the street interviews, everybody, wherever you live, whether you're in the United States or elsewhere, and you were to ask just a kind of random sampling of, let's say, 10 people, what do you think about putting fluoride in the water? Or what do you think about the idea that fluoride is dangerous for you? You would probably get people who are like, oh man, that's conspiracy talk, right? I mean, fluoride's great. My dentist puts it in my mouth. People are so uneducated on this topic, and it's by design. And coincidentally, fluoride also affects your pineal gland. There's people who believe this is part of the spiritual attack. And now we literally know all those so-called conspiracy theorists who said they're trying to dumb you down with fluoride. Well, guess what? It does affect your IQ, especially at a young age as children, as babies in your mom's womb. And we should assume it continues to affect you throughout adulthood. So please, guys, help get this report out. If you've enjoyed this, you can go back to theconsciousresistance.com, check out the front page, and you can see this post. Fluoride lawsuit to resume in January 2024, new cover-up details. You can find that article that I was just covering there as well. Please send that to your friends and family, not just because I want you to share my work, but because we now have to wait till February for this, the next step in this fight. And that means that between then and now, there are going to be families that continue to drink fluoridated water. I posted on social media the other day. I stopped my mom just a couple days ago. I'm here visiting family, from washing her strawberries and her cooking her oatmeal with sink water. And even me, somebody who's been investigating this for over a decade and who's reporting on this trial right now, my family doesn't hear or read or see all my work. So I had to say, hey mom, look, let me tell you why you don't want this. I'm literally working on a trial right now showing that this can affect your IQ and your thyroid and your bones and kidneys and livers and all this. So please spread the information so we can protect more people, as many people as possible. And hopefully in the next year, this crap is finally taken out of the water. And in the meantime, avoid drinking out of the sink, cooking out of the sink, processed foods, pharmaceuticals. What else is there? Processed foods. Oh, the canned goods. Like I mentioned earlier, the water in there is more than likely fluoridated. Get a filter in there if you on the sink if you can. Get a shower filter if you can. If you can't afford that yet, save up some money. Skip drinking for a few weekends and you can afford it. It's not that expensive. But in the meantime, go buy you some BPA-free or glass jugs and start filling up at the local water filling stations that usually do 5 to 7 different types of filtration. You're looking for reverse osmosis to get the fluoride out, but you also need to remineralize it because RO takes out so much of the minerals as well as the toxins. Solutions are there. Don't be passive. Don't be apathetic. Find a solution. Spread the word, guys. And again, if you want to support me, theconsciousresistance.com/invest. You can go here, check out my P.O. box, support me at Buy Me a Coffee, and I will continue to do this work, guys. I greatly appreciate your support. It means the world to me. I'm going to continue to broadcast until they take me off the air. So thank you, guys. See you soon. Remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free. Peace.
Since 2012, the Conscious Resistance Network has been an independent media organization focused on empowering individuals through education, philosophy, health, and community organizing. We work to create a world where corporate and state power do not rule over the lives of free human beings. Our motto is leading by example and helping others in their pursuit of freedom. Visit theconsciousresistance.com to find our articles, documentaries, interviews, podcasts, books, and more. Remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free.